Hello everyone, and welcome to our show, Meet the Makers Engineering Edition. We're so excited to have you guys joining us today. Well, I would like to give a very warm welcome to our host for today, Karo. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Makers Engineering Edition. This series is all about sharing the stories that make up Canva. We are extremely lucky to have so many wonderful people working at Canva who come from all the walks of life. My name is Karo, and I'm a tech lead at Canva Video. During my 4 years at Canva, I worked as Android engineer, then crossed to front-end, and now I'm managing a team of 4 people within the video group. Engineering plays a huge role in shaping Canva's products and delivering value to our global community of 75 million monthly active users. At Canva, engineering is one of the fastest growing disciplines, and we have so many engineering roles apart from the classic front-end and back-end split. There is a place for native mobile engineers, multiple roles in the data space, analytical, scientific, and engineering. There is infrastructure, security, QA. We even have a magical role called creative technologist. I could go on and on about all the different technical roles available at Canva, but instead I would like to focus on the way we organize our teams. Canva is split into groups which focus on a specific part of the product. Within each group, there are many small teams working on even smaller subset of that area. Each team consists of many specialists. Most often, product team will be built of a product manager, product designer, few front-end and back-end engineers, data analyst, QA engineer, and if the project requires machine learning or data engineer. Some teams would be purely built from infrastructure and back-end engineers, and some from data and ML engineers. At Canva, you can find any configuration you can think about, and it's all done to make the development as smooth as possible. And that's about it for the engineering overview. And now let's get to today's guest, Desiree, to share a bit about her story. Welcome, Des.
All right, thanks for the welcome.
So let's start with your role at Canva. Can you tell us a bit more about your work?
Sure. So I'm a front-end engineer and recently the team lead of the design automation team at Canva. So my role involves a mix of writing code and building features, but also a more of a support role for the team. So unblocking issues that come up so we can achieve our goals, and also sort of setting the direction for our goals so that they support our mission. Like every team at Canva has a different focus, and design automations is to make design faster and easier through automation. And there's also finding opportunities for team members to grow and like sort of filling the roles so that our team can take on even bigger challenges.
Awesome. So for the users, Canva is a design tool, but it is also extremely creative from within. What are the most creative projects you have worked on at Canva?
Good question. So our team works in a pretty open-ended problem space. So we've had the opportunity to work on a number of interesting projects at the junction of like engineering and visual design. A couple of examples are the design makers. These are to generate design. It's going to be pretty useful, for example, if you're a small business owner or a social media manager and need to like generate a suite of different designs in one go instead of having to make them manually. You can use like this sort of flow. Another one is palette application. It's a feature that makes it easy to change the color and font palette of your design in a single click. So again, if you're like making a presentation or some sort of large document and realize you want to rebrand it or want to experiment with like different colors or different font styles, this lets you do that without having to change everything manually.
Wow, someone who tries to keep the brand consistent across, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all of that. I really appreciate all of the automated features you and your team has been creating. And yeah, talking about creativity, I know your path to software engineering role wasn't the most traditional one. Could you tell us more about your journey and how you ended up at Canva?
Yeah, so I actually started out not really knowing what I wanted to pursue as a career out of uni. I wanted to do something creative, but wasn't sure how practical that would be. So I studied a bit of everything, like law, photovoltaic engineering, maths. In the end, I became a consulting engineer at an energy efficiency firm, which was really interesting, but I still felt the call of doing something a bit more creative. So I ended up sort of switching careers to become a graphic designer. which just involved making a portfolio, just applying around until I got a job as an intern at a digital agency. Because a lot of their projects involved like websites and apps, I ended up doing more and more front-end work and just sort of learning skills on the job. And after a few years of this sort of client work, I sort of wanted to work on a longer term product that could be iterated on and polished over time. Also sort of wanted to hone my own engineering skills and learn from like a big group of experienced engineers. And at the time, Canva seemed like a really great fit because it had that mix of design and engineering, being a graphic design software platform. And yeah, so it involves, I found that it does involve a lot of creative problem solving, and also that having this sort of different background and an interest in graphic design and visual communication was actually really helpful for the job.
That's amazing. That's a great journey. So now talking about front end, which is what you're doing, what technologies are you using?
So on the front end stack, we mostly work in TypeScript and use the React framework. If you haven't come across these technologies before, TypeScript is a typed superset of JavaScript. It just allows us to check types at compile time. So it's great for consistency, readability, and guarding against type errors. And React is a declarative JavaScript library. It's used for building user interfaces using these sort of small and isolated components, which can be very helpful when you have like a team of hundreds of engineers working on the same code base. It's open source, it's really configurable, and it has a large community of contributors. And we also use it can be used with a number of different state management libraries. Canva specifically uses MobX. That's just a quick rundown.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for explaining that. So now with the field you're working on, right? Like design automation, this is an extremely innovative space. What type of support regarding that have you received at Canva?
Yeah, so it can be a bit challenging because it's like relatively uncharted territory. There's not really many case studies or best practices on how to approach building a team like this. So it's been really helpful to have support from our founders who believe like in the vision and that it will take some bigger risks and like longer term projects while also, delivering these user facing features like pilot application and the design makers like as we go. Also, working with other teams in adjacent spaces at Canva is really helpful because we have a lot of really experienced engineers in like image processing, in machine learning that we can sort of talk to and share ideas. And also having support for self-learning within the team. So that's both having the time to go to workshops or do your own self-study and allowance to sign up for these sorts of courses as well.
Yeah, so talking about self-learning, why are you passionate about engineering?
I guess because it has this potential to have a really tangible impact on people's lives. Like it's involved in pretty much every aspect of our modern lives these days, and really important and also pretty fascinating, the sort of creative problem solving that it lets me do.
So a little bit switching gears here, backstory. So Des and I participated in the first cohort of Unstoppable Me, which is a program that helps women and gender diverse people to take a step towards leadership roles by overcoming their blockers and creating an actionable plan with great guidance from our internal coaching team. Des, could you tell us how the program changed your day-to-day job?
Yeah, it was a really interesting and rewarding experience because often what I found is that I'm so busy working on like regular things, getting through the to-do list. I'm in my day-to-day job and getting frustrated by like blockers and not really knowing what to do about it. So it was valuable just to have the time to step back and like address the root cause of these sort of issues. Personally, I had a lot of issues with confidence and communication, and our internal coaches, as part of this program, sort of really dug into this and helped facilitate discussion in a safe space. And it was also good to have that accountability through having the action plan and the regular checkup. It was also helpful just to have a cohort of other women engineers who are going through sort of similar and also different issues, and have that support group and feel a bit less alone. And yeah, I guess as a result, while it's still always a work in progress, I felt ready to sort of ask for and take on more responsibility. I'm speaking here today, so constantly pushing myself to work on new skills.
Yeah, talking about new skills, shortly after you finished the Unstoppable Me program, you became your team's coach. So could you tell us how coaching at Canva is different from traditional engineering manager's role?
That's another good question. Canva is the first tech company I've worked at that's like large enough to have this sort of coaching structure. So it might not be the most direct comparison, but from what I've like seen and heard around, something that sort of stood out from the start was having this focus on having coaches more support their team members from the bottom up rather than it being like a top-down sort of rigid hierarchy. So it's much more about helping to unblock the people in your team, finding the opportunities for them to develop their own skills and work on challenging projects and in turn, like take on more responsibilities.
Yeah, challenges. On that topic, what's been easier than you expected at Canva and what's been harder than you expected?
It was easier than I expected to find the opportunity to own my own projects. There's a big culture of autonomy at Canva. So, it's helpful to be self-driven and you're really encouraged to sort of go ahead and make things happen, partly because there's a lot more ideas and improvements than engineers to like ever action them all. So chances are there will be something that you can take on if you have the interest. On the flip side, unlike say uni and other jobs, the problems can be a lot less defined. So because they're so large and so novel, there's usually a number of different approaches you could take, and you sort of need to try out completely new or untested ones. So I think just having the confidence to try things out, learn how to quickly iterate and assess your approaches has been helpful for that. And also, especially as Canva has grown so quickly, there's the challenge of keeping track of what's happening across teams in the company so that you can sort of share work, avoid reinventing the wheel, and sort of save time for everyone.
So how do you do that? How do you keep track?
So communication is really important. So as team lead, it's important to be in contact with other teams like within your group and across the company to know what's going on. This is also done through sort of regular syncs that we have and show and tells on like the team level, the group level, and also the company level, which gives time for engineers to share what they've been working on. And async communication through Slack and documentation on Confluence and things like that is also really important, especially with remote work being more of a norm these days.
Yeah, totally. What are then some of your biggest highlights of your time at Canva so far?
There's a lot to list, but I think shipping my first feature and seeing it in production on the editor where like millions of people would actually see and use it was the moment where it felt real. And that was a huge highlight for me. Just being able to gain new knowledge when I realized I understand a bit more about an area or a technology I had no idea about before. I guess since becoming a coach, sort of the vicarious highlights of seeing team members excelling at the projects they do and the things they're passionate about. And on a more like social or personal level, just being able to make real friends at Canva, being involved in the clubs and the sort of culture has actually been like a really rewarding and positive experience.
Yeah, that's so true. Like I totally share those highlights with you, and like all the knowledge you acquire with all the challenging projects you're working on and like observing your teammates' progress, it's extremely motivating. Let's maybe chat about the future now. What do you think about the future of design AI engineering? How is it going to look like?
It's another good question. It's pretty uncharted territory, but it has like a huge amount of potential because there's so much to explore. So it's got this sort of convergence of a lot of different disciplines like image processing, natural language processing, computer vision, data science, and how that all relates to graphic design. So I think the big questions to answer, like how do you generate designs? What makes it good when you understand users when they want it, but not being overly prescriptive and stifling creativity. Like there's one analogy I heard a while back, but that fits pretty well is back in the day when cake mixes were first put on the market, you actually had everything you needed like in this packet to make a cake, but it wasn't actually very successful. And it wasn't until they actually let people, add the eggs and add like their own ingredients and make it feel like it was something they created that it really took off. Sort of analogous to what we're doing. And currently we're in the realm of like visual, just graphic design, but there's potential to expand. So yeah, there's a lot to explore.
I can really see and understand why you don't really want, do all of the creative job for the users, because looking at how creative you are, why would you take it away from the user? So the way you are talking now about the product your team is building is you help people be even more creative, which is really amazing. Yeah, I really love that.
Well, I think that is it for today. So thank you everyone for joining. And before we go, we've also got a design school website where you can view all our upcoming events. And I think we've got all our events for February up. So if there's any of interest, I would definitely recommend signing up. Thank you everyone for attending. I hope you learned something. And make sure to stay tuned for future episodes with our team here at Canva. Thank you, everyone. Bye.